Well, another Monday means it's Talking Laurels time. This is the third installment of our Talking Laurels chat. And of course, we saw some brilliant action in the quarterfinals at Curraheen Park on Saturday night. We're lucky enough to be joined once again by the exile dub, Tommy Lyons, down in Youghal. And of course, we have a special guest this week, Rory Burke of C103. Rory, you're very welcome to the Talking Laurels podcast. We'll just say hello to Tommy first. Tommy, how are you doing?
Good, yeah, good.
Now, Rory, back to you. Rory, firstly, before we get into the Laurels chat, tell us about yourself and your interest in greyhound racing. Where did it all start?
Well, I suppose probably from the mid-'80s I got involved going greyhound racing up the old Western Road track at the time. Then maybe a little later on, I had an involvement in a couple of greyhounds myself, which didn't do too good. But recently, my daughter and her fiancé started training dogs themselves here in Cork. They had great success so far, about 17 winners this year, which is great. Really got me involved in it. I do a lot of work with them behind the scenes, and that's what I love most about greyhound racing, even to tell the truth, is what happens behind the scenes, the preparation of the dogs, the love and care that each and every one of them gets, and then see them progress onto the track and hopefully run well.
When you say behind the scenes, what they do is they hand you the lead and say, "Now go walk for 3 hours and come back fit the fiddle."
Absolutely, I wouldn't be the best with the walking myself. But no, it's just to see what goes on, and it really annoys me, people that don't know a lot about the sport, when they start knocking it, because I can tell you, seeing it firsthand myself on a daily basis, the love and care that each and every one of those greyhounds receives is phenomenal. And again, it's an added bonus when they win at the track, but it's all about basically getting a dog racing and enjoying it again.
Rory, they say like the more love and attention you give a dog, the faster it'll probably go. I think that's the rule of thumb.
Absolutely. The individual care, they're big into that. Each dog gets its own individual care handled on a daily basis. They're athletes at the end of the day. They all have different food. They all have different regimes. But yeah, definitely the more care they get, the better they perform.
Tommy, athletes like ourselves, huh? The Greyhounds. And there was 24 athletes in action at Curraheen Park on Saturday night in the quarterfinals of the Laurels. We saw four cracking heats, four very interesting heats, four very different heats. We'll kick off with the obvious ones, the Grange U10s and Brody's Magic of this world, both showing devastating early speed. Brody's Magic was all out to hold on, but despite that, it was a very impressive display by him.
You know what? I was talking to Rory on C103 on Saturday, and I said that I thought that Brody's might break 28 seconds. And you know what? He probably would have if he trapped. He just did it wrong early. But I tell you what, the gap seemed to close. I was down at just close to the traps, and as you watch from behind, the gap seemed to close up the rails. And somehow he just went for that gap. And I don't know how he got through, and I don't know how he maintained his line along the inside as he did it. But it was a phenomenal performance. I mean, to do 28-20 after all that, I mean, to my mind, it was a sub-27 or 28-second run. Like, it was a phenomenal effort. Now, Grange U10, and this is the point where I have to say you were right, Ian, but Grange U10 did it all right the other night.
There's plenty of time for that, Tommy. We'll go into great depth how I was right, okay, in a moment.
What's rare is wonderful, Ian, so we might as well make a big deal of it. But, it was great. It was great to see the two of them produce such a good performance. Possibly slightly a shame, although the more I think about it, the more it makes next Saturday night very exciting, and even the final, that they're meeting in the semi-final rather than in the final, because we had what we wanted. Even if Pastana and Newey and Taylor maybe not 100% on the night, or things just didn't go right on the night in the Derby final, they met for the first time in the final. It was great. I thought we were teed up towards that for Brody's Magic and Grange U10. Now, if only one of them qualifies from the semi-finals next Saturday night, they're probably going to be a strong favourite for the final. But you know what? I think this might just be vulnerable. There are a lot of really strong stayers doing 28-20. And we saw that again the other night. Ballymacanton led. I'm not really sure how that happened, but Ballymacanton led. And he was all out to hold off Blast Off Fire. But again, he was doing his time. 28-24 is the exact same time as he did the previous weekend. And Drewby's Hamish, there was a bit of a tangle in that race, and Drewby's Hamish came off the pace. It was the slowest heat. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Two very interesting heats. Obviously, the clash of the two boys, Grange U10 and Brody's Magic, is the highlight of next weekend. But it'll set up a good final.
It certainly will set up a good final. Rory, you were looking from afar. I'm afraid you weren't on track. You were watching the live stream on the IGB website. Or beg your pardon, or here we are, 1 week in, I'm already getting it wrong. The GRI website, I had to think about it there for a moment. It's going to take a while to get used to that one.
Absolutely. It was fabulous to be able to watch the racing live from Curraheen Park at the comfort of my own home last evening. For me, Graham Dew 10, I thought an absolutely fantastic performance. He blasted over the traps, as we know. He showed his big early pace to great effect, and he put the heat to bed in a matter of strides. That's the one that I would have taken out of the quarterfinals last Saturday evening. Very, very impressive. Another one was probably the very fast finishing Beach Avenue, I feel, is one to keep on next Saturday night, that he could go all the way to the final.
Yeah, Beach Avenue is a strange one, Tommy. He's a dog that, like, we've seen even racing over 6 bends in recent enough times, but Paul Hennessy has some record in this competition through the years. And here's a dog that you probably wouldn't have even counted in your top 15 or 20 prior to the competition starting. You produced some run the other night, and who's to say with a clear run in the semi-finals you won't be in the final?
I think he has a great draw in the semi-final, actually. I think the race will tee up for the likes of him. Maybe Sweep the Yard has a great draw as well. But yeah, he's running fantastically well. He's making up phenomenal ground from halfway. The type of ground that you don't expect greyhounds can make up around a fast track over 5.25 yards when they're doing 28.20 or 28.10, that sort of time. What he's doing from halfway is absolutely phenomenal. Just a word on Paul Hennessy. I think I was talking to Kevin just leaving the track the other night, and I think Price's Blake was going to be retired. He just wasn't the same greyhound as that won the English Derby last year. But he's been a fantastic greyhound for them, and also it was a great day for Paul on Saturday. He had the winner of the beginners chase in the afternoon. So Paul
in the same week that it was announced there was going to be a mare's chase at the Cheltenham Festival, you'd almost think Paul Hennessy had a bit of influence now.
Yeah, we'll have to give out. Maybe John Turner maybe had an influence there, but yeah, it's a mare's chase. It's not a novice chase, but I'm sure Paul won't mind tilting at that. He's never been afraid to aim high with his greyhounds, and I'm sure he'll be the exact same with the horses.
Well, Rory, you were impressed with Beach Avenue. Of course, you'd have been impressed with his mare as well. You keep an eye on the horses.
I do. A big fan of horse racing as well, yeah, to go along with the greyhound racing. But looking back again on Saturday night, I think there was a couple of hard luck stories, as we know, particularly Johnny Regan's 7-head rock. Very unfortunate. He looked as if he had the heat done and dusted, really, until he was hampered at the third bend.
Yeah, it was a strange one. Like, obviously, we're going to blame it on the curse of Barry Drake after interviewing John during the week on his podcast. But yeah, he once again showed devastating early speed. 7-heads rock, Tommy. Running to see moved off the opening corner. We know he does that. That's not a new thing. So, moving off, you can't say anything about that, because we've seen him even from the front in the opening round. He dived out from trap 1 to the middle of the track. That's what he did in the opening corner. And at the third bend, I can see why they did hold an inquiry, but at the same time, they got tangled up, but he was gone past by the time Droopy's Hamish got upsides as well. So the stewards, did they come to the right decision? No alterations.
Well, to be honest with you, I watched the race a number of times, and the quality of the picture wasn't good enough, or maybe I couldn't get close enough to a television to see it exactly right. I think they came to the right decision. We were talking about it at length on Saturday night at the track, and we were saying it would be impossible to do anything there. It just wasn't clear cut. To my mind, I thought, and again, I'm not with the full facts in one sense, because I was a bit far away from it. I thought the 7-head dog came in a little bit, and they just tightened up. Now, whether he did or didn't, I don't know. They tightened up a bit more than anything else. I would say it would have been extremely harsh to card running to see you for that. Yeah, I think it's the right decision. In some ways, like, you just hope that something doesn't happen at the first bend again. Last weekend was a bit unfortunate. I hope it doesn't happen again. Running to see a will check. That's what he does. There's no malice in that at the first bend. He does it when he's in the clear. He does it when he's beside dogs. It doesn't matter. He just checks at that bend. It's an unfortunate trait. Probably the fact that there's not a huge amount of early pace in the heat that he's in on Saturday night is a help, because he might be on his own when he does it, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden the dogs behind him might get a clear run, or might get a chance to at least see what he's doing and switch inside him or switch outside him. Could actually make for quite a clear run and an interesting heat final, or heat in semi-final. I think it'll set it up for the strong stayers on Saturday night.
Yeah. Now, Rory, you may have noticed the theme of this podcast. Like last week, we had Mertz, and in previous weeks, I think we've never had a guest that's actually younger than us, bar Barry Drake. Now Barry Mertz himself, but Mertz was on Cash and go as an each way bet. He said she was a great draw the other night. She was. She came through in second spot. But I'd say, as one of the elder statesmen now, Rory, yourself, certainly in this podcast, you be keeping an eye on Ballymac Anton, because he is representing the Alpha Leagues. He's got a few grey whiskers there.
Thanks very much, Ian. Yeah, Ballymac Anton, he led early and he looked as if he had, as if he was set for a snug victory. However, it was far from that. Blast Off Fire, who was a reserve, remember, in round one, finished with a blistering turn of foot as well. The winning time, 28-24. I think you have to be a bit disappointed with Ballymac Anton. During the race, you would expect them to kick on and win maybe a bit more snugly.
Yeah, still 28-24 at the same time, Tommy, but I dare say, like, you've seen a bit more of the Blast-Off dog than I have. Were you surprised by him? Like, he's a very fast greyhound, clearly.
He's clearly a very fast greyhound. I was a bit surprised, I'll be honest. I think the track was in good nick, and I can understand what Rory's saying, to be honest. I just think that at this stage of his career, Ballymac Anton, that's probably what he's capable of. I mean, it's still, he's a 4-year-old dog, almost 4 years old, doing those times. Yeah, I thought when he broke in front that maybe we'd be talking about a sub 28 second run, just that he had everything in his favour. But maybe he just did what he can do now at the moment. He can do 28-24. It's a fantastic time. I've never had a greyhound that can do that. So for Liam Dowling to have one at nearly 4 years of age who's still capable of doing it, he's probably not the force he was, but he looks like he's going to be a Laurels finalist, doesn't he?
Yeah, he certainly he does, because you'd imagine 1 and 3 would be gone in the semi-finals. We're talking about Brody's Magic now and Grange U10 or either side of him. You'd imagine they'll be gone. You get a lovely clean up the inside. His biggest problem could be something like a Drewby's Hamish, that if the other two slip around in front and do manage to avoid each other, build a clear advantage, and there's no reason why they should clash, Brody's Magic and Grange U10. It just leaves Ballymac Anton that if he's third with the likes of a Drewby's Hamish on his tail into the back straight, you never know. Cash and Goby's out in trap 6. She's one of 2 ladies remaining in the stake, herself and which is Ethiopia. The bitch has been sort of running very well. Like it's a theme throughout the Irish Derby, English Derby. Yeah. It's amazing how well they're running. Witches Ethiopia was only third the other night, but she did make up good ground in the finish. And Cash and Goby, while it looked like she was going to be beaten 8 lengths at halfway, she actually goes down 3.5 lengths to Grange U10. She's a strong runner, and again, she has her draw out in the stripe jack. It'd be good to see one of the ladies go far, Rory.
Absolutely, of course. As you mentioned there, that the bitches are running extremely well. Which is Ethiopia is a dog that I fancy will progress on Saturday night and actually make the final. Yeah,
she's like, it's very strong running heat, as Tommy alluded to, but the fact that she probably has a touch more early speed than a few of her rivals. Like, you normally wouldn't be expecting her to lead in a race of sort of a Laurel semi-final stature, but in this kind of a contest, she could easily turn very close to the pace with running to see it looking the more obvious leader.
Absolutely. The first semi-final, as we said, none of the quarter-final winners are in this. It looks wide open. Not a lot of early pace in it, except for running to see it. Beach Avenue, as we mentioned earlier, is the one that I fancy will run a very, very big race, which is Ethiopia, as I said, going through as well.
Tommy, the opening heat, the second heat is the one with all the early speed. As we said, the 2 dogs, Brody's Magic and Grange U10. The fact that the empty stands, we're expecting them to get their start again. We've touched on this through the Irish Derby chats that, there's no reason for the natural starters to miss the kick. There's no noise, there's no distractions.
No, the only thing we did talk about a couple of weeks ago is that maybe Brody's Magic, just he might get a little bit buzzy. I don't know what happened the other night in terms of how he missed it. He still did a 3:31 sectional, which is ridiculous considering that he didn't quite do things right at the traps. I just loved his attitude. I just loved the way he did it at going to the first bend. Look, to my mind, at the moment, and they're both in good form. To my mind, Brody's Magic is in the better form. It's probably a harsh thing to say when a dog has done 28-16 like Grange U10 did. Lacked maybe a tiny bit of explosiveness, did you think?
He just did it. He just does it professionally. That's the way I see it. He still ate clear by sort of by the third bend or the guts of it. It was quite a taking display from my mind. He made light work of the task of leading out number to the opening corner. We will get back to that now in a moment, Tommy. And I know you're grinning there, but Ian knows that's the way I see it.
Yeah.
But no, as you say, the 4 heat winners are drawn alongside each other. They're in traps 1, 2, 3, and 4. But yet we're talking about it's either going to be Brody's Magic or Grange U10 that wins this heat. Is that the way we're looking at it?
That's the way I'm looking at it, Ian, because one of them will definitely break, and possibly both of them. The reason I was saying that maybe Grange U10 just slightly, I feel like I'm down the dog. Barry Drake was laughing at me, kind of taking the mick a bit on Saturday night coming back from the dogs. He was saying, geez, you really don't want Grange U10 to win or you'll get some grief. I don't mind if Grange U10 wins. Let him win if he wants, because he's a fabulous dog, and said a world of time for Pat Gilfoyle as a trainer. But I'm just, you know, when you're looking at a racing, you're trying to find some little thing. I've already found some little thing of Brody's Magic, you know what I mean, that he might be a little bit buzzy maybe or whatever, and that he can miss the kick. So I mean, I don't think either of them are bulletproof. I don't think, you know, I think one of them, if only one of them qualifies, as I said, it'll be very short for the final. If both of them qualify, it'll be an interesting final. Maybe next Saturday night will tell us quite a bit. But what interested me last Saturday night, and the reason I say that I slightly favour Brody's Magic at the moment, is Grange U10 did 15.94, and Brody's Magic did everything wrong at the start and did 15.97. So they both do it right. Brody's Magic, like he was earlier in the competition, is going to be clear of Grange U10. And then there are strong stayers in behind, whichever of them doesn't lead could be vulnerable in. Isn't that true? Like that I think that makes sense, that whichever doesn't lead, because for those type of dogs to get around
is one more vulnerable than the other?
God, I think that's a good question, very difficult question. I would say this, it feels a little bit like sitting on the fence, but I think they're equally vulnerable, because Brody's Magic obviously, you know, isn't the strongest there. We saw how much ground he lost late, but he had done phenomenal work early. Grange U10, when he was led in the earlier rounds, now Pat Gilfoyle will say, you know, he's bringing the dog to a boil, and maybe that's exactly what he was doing, and maybe that's why I didn't see the explosiveness that I was looking for. He's you know, I'm just thinking back to what he's done in the past. That's why I say that maybe slightly below his very best. Again, he's a what is he? April 17. He's 3.5. Like I'm just picking holes here just to try and find a reason why I can favour one over the other. They're both vulnerable, I would say. They're both vulnerable because you've got a Ballymac-Anton. You said you've got a Druggy's Hamish. You've got Cash and Goby on the outside. Maybe Cash and Goby isn't good enough. But you know what? It's a type of heat where something will happen. Something will happen up front, and they will leave a chance for those coming from behind. Look, if I had to say one of them, like if you ask me which of them is more likely to hit their break, I'd say Grange U10. But which of them is more likely to lead? Brody's Magic. What he did, Ian, watch that over and over again, that run to the first bend last week, what he did up the inside when there was no gap, and how he kept his line. It was serious. It was absolutely fabulous to watch.
I'm glad I didn't ask him a long question there, Rory. He'd still be talking in about an hour's time. Rory, if you had to pick one of the two of them, Brody's Magic or Grange U10, who would you pick?
I'd pick Grange U10. Very impressive on Saturday night. A finalist last year. He loves it around Cork. He mightn't have age on his side, but he certainly has experience. And Grange U10 for me. In fact, Grange U10 probably to win the Laurels outright.
Good man, Rory. Good man, Rory. You're following in the footsteps now. Some great men in that prediction. I can promise you that. That said, I do think it'll come down to the draw in the final. I just hope the two of them are there. You know, as we've spoken about, we do want to see the best dogs in the decider. Yeah. There's no question that Brody's Magic and Grange U10 are two of the best 6 dogs remaining. Whether they're the first and second best dogs in the competition, well, we've yet to see. Listen, there's still 1 or 2 dogs that are improving through the competition, and may they line up in the final. That would be great. But again, the draw is going to be very important. I think we're all in agreement that Brody's Magic is at his very best when he's on the fence. If he was in 3 or 4 in the decider and Grange U10's up the inside, it's a big difference than if they were reversed. Let's say if Grange U10 was in 4 and Brody's Magic is in 1. You know, Grange U10 is going to go up reasonably straight, wait for his line, but Brody's Magic, he has shown the liking for that inside.
Yeah, look, what I said last week, the position I was in was that if I was to have a bet, it would be taking the 7-2 Brody's Magic with the eye of doing something later on. Now, if you had taken the 7-2 before the quarterfinals and you see him qualify and get trap 1, you'd be saying, happy days, I surely to God I have a finalist now. You know, the race is absolutely perfect for him on Saturday night. Ballymac-Anton isn't the quickest of breakers. It should give him a lovely gap up the inside rail. It's whether he can lead Grange U10. Grange U10 isn't going to dive in even if he produces his best break. I'd like to see him go up straight because if he does move in a little bit, Brody's Magic is going to go straight up along the inside rail like he did last Saturday night, and there could be trouble. We don't want that. We want them both to qualify. I still think this Laurels is far from over. Like, even if you said you can take the two of them coupled at a half reasonable price, I wouldn't be certain that they were going to win it.
If you threw them into, let's say, and there's only 2 wide seats left, there's a very strong possibility of 6 inside seats. If you threw Brody's Magic into 5 and Grangeview 10 into trap 4 in the final, you'd be laying the pair of them coupled all day.
But you'd be backing Grangeview 10. Okay, you'd be siding with Grangeview 10.
Okay. Even though Brody's Magic going to run in straight in top of him.
Because you from the draw, like Brody's Magic broke from trap 5 in the previous round and didn't get across dogs that wouldn't have the same sort of explosive early pace as Grangeview 10 has. So if he couldn't get across them, he's not going to get across Grangeview 10. So you'd either be if you're going to pick one of those two, you're siding with Grangeview 10. But if you're not, you might be looking for a bit of value elsewhere.
Well, there'll certainly be value elsewhere if the two of them were in the final. Rory, looking ahead to us, is there anything apart from the big two that we've mentioned there that looks well housed that you think will be in the decider? You've mentioned Beach Avenue. He's obviously one that you've been keeping an eye on.
Oh, absolutely. Beach Avenue is one, as we said. He flies home, very consistent throughout the Laurels this year. He has the trap that he wants. He'll stay out of trouble, hopefully, out there. Another one maybe is Droopy's Hamish, another one that we know is a strong stare. And if the top dogs, the trap 1 and trap 3, interfere with each other, I think Droopy's Hamish has a great chance of going through as well on Saturday night and making the final.
Yeah, he's been shown some pace home, in fairness to him, Rory.
Absolutely. Again, a Cork dog, which we all like to see. And I know that his connections think an awful lot of him. So fingers crossed that we'll have 1 or 2 Cork dogs in the final this year.
You know, I'm a dub now, Rory. For me, if they're from Munster, they're from Munster. They're just Munster dogs. I don't class them as Cork dogs, as Tip dogs, as Limerick dogs, anything. It's just Munster to me, you know. Our sole Leinster representative went out the other night with Fáinne Curraheen. I'm afraid, look, not on his side. Tommy, of the big finishers, which is the one that looks most likely to be in the final?
Sweep the Yard. It's a brilliant draw in the first semi-final.
We'd run it to see you move into the middle of the track.
Run to see is probably going to break in trap 2. I think the statement they made was probably somewhat right in the sense that run to see you wants to run a middle line from the first bend, but it wants to be in the inside box to trap. Now, with slow starters around him, he should be fine from trap 2. I think running to see you will lead, but Sweep the Yard will get the run of all time. And he's not the slowest early. He's not very slow early. You know what I mean? I just think that this race could be set up for him to turn close second, if not in front. I wouldn't be surprised if Sweep the Yard led out of the second bend.
He's a bit like us. You know, the three of us here now. Sweep the Yard is a bit like us. There's definitely a bit of character in him. Do you know what I mean? There's definitely a bit of character in him.
And look, he was running in A1 company not that long ago, so I mean you wouldn't see him as a Laurels final or a Laurels winner. But I just think the way he has been running recently, and the fact that the makeup of the semi-final is perfect for him, I think Beach Avenue and himself will both qualify. Yeah,
Teddy Hegarty's a share in Sweep the Yard, amongst others, hence the Broken Bookie Syndicate. I know probably Stuart Kenny's probably involved and others like that. So he's carrying a bit of clout, in fairness to him. Rory, of the others, is there anything else that jumps out at you in the semi-finals? Listen, don't worry about it. I'm going to be asking your 6 finalists in a few minutes' time anyway. So,
well, I might as well give you my 6 finalists. I think Brody's Magic, obviously Ballymac and Grangeview 10 will go through from the second semi-final. The first semi-final, Beach Avenue, as I keep talking about, I think he's a cracking chance, followed by Sweep the Yard. And also running the Sia. I think that'll be the final lineup this year.
That'll be a cracking final. Tommy?
Yeah, I think similar. I think Run to Sia will lead the way into the first bend and will qualify in the first semi-final. Sweep the Yard has a great draw. Beach Avenue, you couldn't kick it out of the final. It just stays so strongly. The ground it makes up is phenomenal. And there's a slow starter inside. It's nearly a perfect makeup. Of course, I'd like Liam Toomey's Greyhound. They're great supporters of the Yaw track. I'd like which is each to qualify. She just needs to avoid running to see it early. And I think that the top dog, the Sweep the Yard dog, will slip around on the inside, so it'll make it more difficult for her. And in the other one, I'm not sure that the both of them will qualify, but it's hard to say. You know, it's hard to say which of them won't. So I'll have to go for the two of them. I think it's a 1-2-3. It's going to finish 1-3-2, 1-2-3.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Both heats are intriguing. There's nothing
Yeah.
certain in these heats. Anything could happen in both of them, especially the first heat. I know Run to See It does perhaps look the most likely leader, but you've got some really strong dogs there, and dogs with a real sort of, I don't want to be beaten pace, that sort of pace. Dogs that'll pick up that extra length or two when they are behind. The likes of Sweep the Yard, Blast Off Fire tonight showed exceptional pace and strength to get as close as he did. I'm surprised neither of you went for him to qualify. His problem is Running to See It, but if he does miss the kick, he's probably better off than if he hits it, which is Ethiopia. Like even Springwood Vardy, like I know the race was thrown to him, or the qualification spot was thrown to him. Firstly, at the first bend where he slipped around fourth, and then was sort of, well, with Seven Heads Rock finding the traffic around the bottom two bends, he was allowed to get back into the contest. But he too is finishing well. Another dog with 6 bend form, and Beach Avenue, well, as we say, with a son-in-law, Hill Blake, and he's like he'll stay all day. It's so funny, like sometimes pedigree really just doesn't come into it. But Beach Avenue as well, he is well housed in the striped jacket. It's very hard to pick a 3 in that. Like yourselves, I'd have to Sweep the Yard in. Run to See It is probably the most likely pace setter in the contest, but if he misses it, he's in problems. That's real trouble. I think Beach Avenue will get through. I'll take a chance maybe and stick Blast Off Fire, so I'll go 1-3-6, leaving out Running to See It. You never know what might happen there. If he doesn't hit the lids, I think he'll be in bother. Like yourselves, I'll stick in. I think Brody's Magic is absolutely guaranteed to be there, because I do believe if he traps on level terms, he'll be in front. I think that. I think Grange U10 is probably the more vulnerable of the pair on Saturday night, but at the same time, they could easily be 5 or 6 lengths clear of the third dog at halfway, and that might be enough for him. And I'll go with, I'll stick with Ballymac Anton for third. So we're a clean sweep in the second heat, but the first heat there are 1 or 2 differences there.
I knew I'd bring you around to Brody's Magic in.
I'm a draw man. I'm a draw merchant. I haven't changed my allegiances. I still think Grange U10, the professional that he is, gets the right draw in the final. He'd be very hard to beat.
Fair enough.
Now, lads, have you been keeping an eye on England?
To some degree, yeah. Doesn't look the strongest of English derbies, does it? You love this English derby. Does it look as strong to you? It doesn't to me.
If you took out the Irish, it looks very weak. That's the way I'd see it. We know the strength of the Irish challenge. Despite our performance the other night, I actually think our challenge weakened somewhat with the likes of New In Session going out and Feudal Spirit and Duel and Duke, whereas I thought those 3 were dogs that could possibly win an English derby. I think 1 or 2 of our heat winners can't win an English derby. Rory, have you been keeping an eye?
I haven't. Too busy down here south, being the biggest county, the biggest sporting county. A lot of sport for me to be covering that. It's all about the Laurels.
Were you at the county final last week? Were you at the celebrations?
No comment.
No comment. Do you know, Rory? You're showing your experience there now. You are showing your experience.
Go back to the English derby for a second, Dean. What do you think? You thought a couple of our heat winners couldn't win it?
I'd struggle to see the likes of Sonley Chick winning it, or even Ballydoyle Valor's probably not showing enough early to win it.
I've been impressed with the early pace of Knock Bull Sid.
Very impressive the other night. Really took off into that opening corner. The way he's going up. If we hadn't seen Price's Blake last year, you'd have said no, that type of dog can't win it. But it's more of a speed test than we give it credit for. And Nottingham, there's no question. Yeah. The results over the last 2 years have suggested you need to be able to go to a corner. But I suppose that counts for Greyhound racing in as a general rule. Like you look at this Laurels, where we are talking about the likes of Beach Avenue, Sweep the Yard, Ballymac Anton, all these many finishers, they're in this competition. And it's far more than in previous years. The Laurels has always been a speed test. This year, we're only really talking about 2, maybe 3 Greyhounds that can really fly to a corner. And the big 2 obviously do stand out, Brody's Magic and Grange U10. Is there a reason for that, Tommy?
I don't know. It's a difficult one, because you would think that maybe it's the type of dog that's come down for the competition this year. I don't know. Somebody was asking me, was it a great quality competition? It's always hard to say. You're stuck between the Irish Derby and the English Derby. You're overlapping with the English Derby, and this has been an exceptional year in terms of everything that's gone on in the country and the world, as well as in Greyhound racing. So I don't know. I think we're going to have a fantastic final. It mightn't be a vintage final in the sense of the quality of it, but I think it's going to be a good final. Yeah, a busy weekend, Ian, wasn't it? Or a good weekend around the country with track records.
Great weekend for greyhound racing. We've had quite a few number of them now, like with even the likes of the Cesarewitch and the Juvenile Derby, and we saw track records, of course, in the sprint and the 600 down at Mullingar. You know, we hadn't seen a record for 10 years at Mullingar, and all of a sudden, like the 46A, they come twice at once. Fine racing down in the Midlands, and of course we have a cracking final in the Juvenile Derby to look forward to. But I'm going to bring you back to this, Laurels, just for a moment or two. You spoke there about the quality of the competition. I think the quality of a competition is often brought down to the quality of the final. You know, in 5 years' time, you won't be saying, "Oh, that wasn't a great Laurels, but we had a great final." You'll be saying, "Geez, that was a great Laurels." Like, I look back to last year, Rory. You know, I'd certainly have it up there, last year's final, as one of the great classic finals of all time.
Absolutely, and it's one of my highlights looking back at the Laurels over the year. And I still believe that Ciara Lynch and Rocky Bay Foley never got the credit they really deserved and what they achieved doing back-to-back Laurels. We know Rocky Bay Foley had his issues to manage the dog, to mind the dog, and to get the dog back there, not only to compete, but to win in the way he did was absolutely fantastic. And as I said, Ciara Lynch and the dog, I think, never got the credit they really deserved.
You make a valid point there, Rory. I suppose it comes down to a touch of snobbery from the likes of us in Dublin, because we didn't really see the best of Rocky Bay Foley in Dublin, although he did win on the Night of Stars about 2 years ago. Nearly at this stage, he was only a puppy. Or 3 years ago, probably, he was a puppy, and did win in a good time that time. But when he came to Dublin thereafter, never really produced his form. You know, there was reasons for that. His tail was swishing around the place, probably not as comfortable around Dublin as he was in Cork. But you know, a truly remarkable greyhound. And of all the dogs over all the years I've seen, I've never seen a greater display by a greyhound at a track than his at Cork over the years. Like, his record in Cork will probably never be matched. You know, his record was sensational.
And his desire to win in every race is phenomenal. The dog wants to win every time he goes out there. And as I said, fantastic achievement doing back-to-back last year, and it'll live long in the memory.
It was a special night. It was a special night, Tommy.
Yeah, it was a special night, and I would argue, like, as you say, it was one of the great finals in one sense. It was one of the most exciting. And Rory's point about him, the desire to win, that's what won him last year's Laurels. He wasn't the shade of the dog that he was the previous year. In terms of his own ability, he wasn't at the very top of his game, but he had that desire to win the second time, and that made it special. Obviously, the second time is more special than the first, because it shows you to be a phenomenal greyhound to win a classic like that. That's that competitive, to win it twice. And I think anybody involved in the dog would admit that he wasn't quite the same greyhound as he was the previous year. But to go and win a Laurels a second time was phenomenal. Yeah, what you were saying, I often feel it too, and maybe. I've been fortunate that I was in Dublin, and of course the Derby and Shelburne was number one for many years, along with Harold's Cross. It was, and then I'm down, in Cork.
You're exiled down in Cork.
I'm exiled, as you like to say, but like, there can be a bit of snobbery about it, and it's only Cork and it's only this, but it is a fantastic competition, and it has a history, and we don't want to labour the point, but just the work that the lads have done just to make sure that the Laurels has sponsorship for 4 years is phenomenal. The snobbery might carry on to Limerick when we go to the Ledger, because you know what I mean. Because although it tends to be the Derby dogs that turn up in Limerick, so maybe it's just that the dogs a little bit better in, But no, I'd be happy with the overall quality of it. I say it mightn't be a vintage Laurels, but I'd be happy with the overall quality of it. I think the cream has risen to the top as the competition has gone on. It's given us two fantastic, very different, but very, very, very competitive semi-finals, and that'll tee up surely a good final.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. As you say, you're hoping just for clean racing in the semi-finals, and that the best six dogs do come through. Rory referenced it earlier on, hard luck stories. We don't want hard luck stories this weekend. Obviously there'll be dogs that'll be failing to qualify by a head or a short head or a neck, but if they lose on their merits, so be it. Do you know what I mean? We just don't want a dog that's in the right pitch and all of a sudden gets clipped from behind, or we don't want a dog that looked absolutely certain to be in the decider and is denied in the final yards.
That's exactly it. We want the best six dogs in the final. Our six dogs, not even the best six dogs that merit being there. Six dogs that have earned their place to run for big money. Like, it's still huge money. So let's get 6 really good dogs into it and have a competitive final. I think it will be, as I said to you, I don't think the top 2 in the betting are penalty kicks, or even to have them coupled, they're not penalty kicks. That final, the draw can't be that straightforward for Brody's Magic or Grandview 10.
So, Tommy, your money's still in Brody's Magic.
My money's in Brody's Magic, with the intention, as I said before, to reassess. I'd be fairly certain, there's no certainty with early patient like that. I'd be fairly certain he'll be a finalist, and then I'll be reassessing come the final and see what the draw is like.
Rory, you're going to stick with Grandview 10?
Absolutely. Again, the draw crucial, but if I think the Grandview 10 is the one. Brody's Magic, the danger, but if he's drawn out in 3, 4, and 5, I think it's handy to Grandview 10 to land it this year.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a dead heat between Brody's Magic and Grandview 10. Before we let you go, lads, Rory, you were mentioned there about your daughter and her fiance involved in a few dogs. What's the best of them? Is there one we have to keep an eye out for?
They had a dog running on Friday night. That one in Cork on Friday night stopped that. Molly, she's a consistent mare.
Mayor, yeah, I know. Force of habit.
Very consistent. But they got a nice few there, and they're all running well, and they're all competing well. And fingers crossed it'll continue.
They'll be looking to get to 25 winners before the end of the year.
Hopefully, that's the plan.
That's the plan. We'll keep an eye out for Stop the Molly and the rest. Well, that's another week for Talking Laurels. Join us next week when we'll know the final 6th. And, well, a great classic and a great final to look forward to, hopefully. Once again, we don't want to see any bad luck stories, but that's it for Talking Laurels for another week. Join us next week when we'll be discussing that all-important decider.